There is one question that every natural bodybuilder will ask sooner or later, and this is, how many sets should I perform for maximum muscle growth? 10, 15, 20, 30? And if you spend time watching bodybuilding videos, you will find out that every influencer seems to have a perfect answer. One coach will tell you that 10 sets per week is all that you need to do per muscle in order to create maximum growth. Other one will tell you 20. Another one will say that high volume is simply junk volume. So who is right? The truth is, almost everybody is asking the wrong question, because muscle growth has never been determined by an arbitrary number of weekly sets. It has always been determined by one thing: your ability to recover from training you perform. And that changes everything. One person may recover perfectly doing 15 sets per muscle group a week. Another one can perfectly recover from doing 25 sets per muscle per week. A third person may struggle to recover from doing 10 sets. Yet modern bodybuilding continues trying to reduce hypertrophy to the single number that supposedly applies to everyone. And it doesn't work like that. Remember, human body is not a spreadsheet, it's not an average taken from a scientific paper. Human body is a biological system that responds differently depending on genetics, nutrition, sleep, age, gender, hormones, stress, training experience, exercise selection, training intensity, and many, many other factors. And this is why two people can perform exactly the same workout, but the results will be very different. One grows while another stagnates. Not because one program is magical, but because one body recovered and the other didn't. The reason the volume debates never ends is because both opposing camps are actually right. The ones that say, oh, you only need to do 10 sets per muscle per week, and also the ones that saying, oh, you need to do 20, 30 sets per muscle per week. They are both right, because some people can make results, especially beginners, if they do 10 sets per muscle per week. Some people who are more experienced can do 25, 30 sets per muscle per week. In both scenarios, people are progressing simply because they're recovering. But if you do more sets that you can recover from, obviously you will not progress. You will actually stop growing. And the problem is that people continue to search for perfect number of sets instead of learning how to read their own body's response. When you study the greatest bodybuilders in history, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, Serge Nubret, Haney, you will notice something interesting. None of these legends become obsessed with performing exactly 16 or 18 weekly sets. They didn't calculate the exact number of sets for every muscle group to scientific averages. Instead, they paid attention to recovery. Frank Zane frequently adjusted his workout and the number of sets depending how he felt. Haney famously said, stimulate the muscle, do not annihilate it. Obviously suggesting that you should find the right number of sets in order to stimulate the growth, not to annihilate the muscle. Serge Nubret, for example, performed an enormous number of sets per muscle, even twice per week for the same muscle. Why did he do it? Because he recovered from it. He knew how to manipulate intensity in order to do number of sets that gave him the best possible results. The key wasn't simply the number of sets. The key was the relationship between stimulus and recovery, and modern bodybuilding often forgets that relationship. Many people believe that recovery simply means muscle soreness disappearing. But recovery is much more complex than that. There are actually two different kinds of fatigue. First of all, there is a local fatigue. This is fatigue that occurs within the muscle trained. So, for example, you train chest today and you feel sore next day or next 2-3 days. The same applies to legs. You're training squats and the next day or 2 days later, 3 days later, your legs are still sore. In fact, some local fatigue is expected. Now, The second type is much more important, and this one is called systemic fatigue. And this fatigue affects the entire body. Your nervous system, your energy levels, your motivation, ability to perform. So when systemic fatigue accumulates, your whole body starts slowing down. You just don't feel tired in one muscle. You feel tired everywhere, and you have most likely experienced that yourself. Your training becomes harder, your recovery becomes slower, strength begins falling, sleep becomes worse, you're waking up during the night, you can't get asleep, your enthusiasm and motivation disappears. And yet many lifters mistake this for needing to add more intensity instead of recovering. They continue to add more hard work. I have seen it so many times. I see people completely overtrained, completely exhausted, but still they would come and they would pile the weights on bench press or bent over rows, try to do everything just to overcome that plateau, not understanding that actually the problem has been caused because their inability to recover from the work they have performed. This also may apply to people who try to add more sets when they experience systemic fatigue, believing that if they increase the number of sets per muscle per week, they will progress further. But this is again not true, and this must not happen. Simply because if your systemic fatigue is still there, there is absolutely nothing that you can do in order to overcome that systemic fatigue, and especially by increasing intensity or increasing the number of sets. And remember, more is not always better, because you will never overcome systemic fatigue by adding more work. You must provide enough stimulus to create force adaptation, but you also must recover from that stimulus. And if recovery cannot keep up, growth stops. Imagine simply digging a hole. So every workout digs a hole a little deeper. Now, if your recovery completely fills the hole, you become stronger. You feel fine, you are motivated, you can't wait for another session. But if your recovery fills that hole only halfway, the hole becomes deeper every week. And eventually, you're simply accumulating fatigue instead of developing muscles. And many people continue to train harder without realizing that their body has already stopped adapting. This is where many people misunderstand scientific research. Unfortunately, many influencers stick blindly to some, as I like to call them, pseudoscientific papers and jump out promoting the amazing discovery that will finally answer that question: how many sets you need per muscle per week in order to make maximum muscle growth. But you need to understand that studies can tell us what happens on average, but average don't tell you what will happen to you. I have said it so many times in so many videos. Yes, they have done some research, they have used some untrained individuals, and they have put them on, for example, 10 sets per muscle per week. And those individuals improved. They would probably improve on 6 sets as well, but they tried with 10. And conclusion was that all that you need to do is 10 sets per muscle per week. Fine, for that particular experimental group of these particular types of individual, fine, these are the results. But what it has to do with you? Obviously nothing, because you can do another experiment and put people on 20 sets per muscle per week and they will still change. So you see how arbitrary this is. And this is because our individual biology is very different, and they don't take into consideration many other factors that I have just mentioned earlier on, which will directly explain to you that averages don't work for everyone. So you have basically to discover how much sets do you need, or more accurately, how can you recover from how many sets. And this is the only way that you should go about number of sets per week. Instead of asking how many sets should I perform, you should be asking, am I recovering from the work that I'm already doing? Because if your answer is no, then adding more sets will never solve the problem. But if answer is yes and your progress has stalled, then perhaps more volume is exactly what you need. The challenge is learning how to tell the difference, and this is exactly what we are going to discuss next. So if recovery is actually what decides about your performance and your growth, then the obvious question becomes, how do I know that I have recovered? Unfortunately, again, there is no simple blood test or scientific advice on that will give you numbers on the spreadsheet and you will just follow them, maybe take a few pills and you're recovered. It doesn't work like that. So there is absolutely no that magic number that everybody is looking for that will work for everyone. Instead, it is your body that constantly provides feedback. And the problem is that most people simply don't know how to interpret it. Over the years, after coaching thousands of clients and training for more than 45 years, I've learned that there are several signs that constantly tell your body when it's adapting or simply accumulating fatigue. So let us look at each of them. The first indicator is probably the most important, and this is strength. Now, when I say strength, for the ones who are watching my videos, you know that I'm not talking about maximum strength. I'm not talking about one repetition maximum. I'm talking about performance from workout to workout. Now, can you perform the same number of reps, a number of sets with the same weight this week as you have done last week? Or can you increase the weight while maintaining the good technique? So progressive overload remains one of the best indicators that recovery is adequate. So when I talk strength, I'm talking about progressive overload. I'm talking about your best training approach, which reflects suggested number of reps and suggested number of sets. And this is critical for determining your recovery. You need to understand that strength doesn't improve every single workout. I know most people are not patient, and especially beginners, they would like to change within a few months, and they will try to push harder, do more reps, more sets, more weight, absolutely in every workout. I see that every day. I've been seeing that for over 4 decades in the gym. But you need to understand that it will take time to build strength and to increase that strength. So if you all of a sudden perform less reps with the same weight for particular exercise and also less sets, that is the signal that you are not recovering enough. So that consistency in performance has to stay equal, relatively equal, because you will never perform the same workout again and again. Sometimes it's going to be maybe less, sometimes a little bit more sets, more reps, maybe more weight. But if you sense that that difference is increasing, then you have clear signal that your body is sending you that you did not recover. The second indicator may be, remember this, may be muscle soreness. Why do I say maybe? Because some people experience muscle soreness the day after or 2-3 days after the same workout. For example, training chest, you feel your chest sore or legs, but some people do not experience muscle soreness. Now, if you're one of those who experiences muscle soreness and you're usually sore for 1 or 2 days after the workout, after 3 days your chest are not sore anymore, that's fine. But if your chest are now sore for 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 days, clearly you are not recovering enough. Why is your chest sore? Because the muscles, connective tissues, and also that local neural pathways did not recover. So this is also a very powerful sign that you are not recovering enough. Another very strong indicator is motivation. So I said it so many times. You should be really looking forward for your next training session. When you enter the gym, you should already be psyched up, happy to do your chest, your shoulders, whatever. You have to be motivated. You feel energetic, you are focused, confident, training feels enjoyable, and these are the times when you know that you are recovering properly. But suddenly, every workout feels like a stress, feels like too much. You start looking for excuses not to do this today or tomorrow. Also, your enthusiasm disappears. And that has nothing to do with discipline. It has everything to do with your recovery. So when you learn how to read these signals that your body is sending you, you will be able to pinpoint the time and the state when you are not recovering. Another very powerful indicator is your sleep. So if what fatigue has accumulated and you are obviously not recovering, that may disrupt your sleeping patterns. Maybe you cannot get a sleep before you did. You go to bed in a few minutes, you're sleeping. Now you're turning around, you can't sleep. It takes half an hour, sometimes an hour. Clearly something is wrong. Or you're waking up during the night, your sleep is completely disturbed. You're hoping you're going to sleep next night, but it's not happening. Clearly, you have accumulated too much systemic fatigue. So your body is under the stress and you are overtrained. Another indicator which was especially known during the golden era, and golden era legends understood it very well, is muscle fullness. So if you feel your muscles full, if you have enough pump in your workouts, if your muscles are dense, obviously you are recovering very well, because otherwise they wouldn't. Now, if your muscles look flat, they feel smaller. Also, it's difficult to pump your muscles, then there is something wrong. It's clearly suggesting that you are not recovering, that you have accumulated a lot of local and also systemic fatigue. So most of the time you may need a few days to recover. Just take off training until this fullness returns. Another strong indicator is your grip strength. A lot of people are asking me about forearms training. I don't advise forearm training simply because you are using your hands all the time. I do not advise to use straps because that will weaken your grip. And I advise people to do their pull-ups, pull-downs, bent over rows, cable rows, upright rows without any straps. So use your grip, strengthen your grip. And your grip is very powerful indicator of your recovery as well. So if you start feeling those weights that you have been using before, now you are gripping and they feel heavier and your grip is giving up, this is yet another indicator that your fatigue has accumulated over time and that you are not recovering. Now let me tell you a few words about local fatigue and systemic fatigue, and this may be the most important concept in today's video. So imagine you're training legs on Monday, your quads are very sore on Tuesday. As you experience probably, walking downstairs becomes very difficult, and this is all perfectly normal. Your central nervous system is fine. Your motivation is high. Your upper body workouts simply remain strong. This is what is called local fatigue. So you have exhausted your muscles, your particular muscles that you've trained days, 2 days, 3 days before, but your whole system is okay. And you can train chest or back next day, no problem. Now, there is another situation. When your whole body is hurting, when you feel tired, you feel exhausted, you don't sleep properly, you don't have any motivation, even warming up feels exhausting. Now we are talking about systemic fatigue, and these two situations are completely different solutions. How many times you have heard me in my videos saying that you should train to exhaust the muscle and not your CNS or central nervous system. When I do my legs, I can hardly walk after 45 minutes of leg workout and 25-30 sets that I've done for quads. But my CNS is fine. I'm not exhausted in the sense that my whole body, my systemic fatigue is too high. My legs are exhausted, but not my CNS. And this is the key. This is absolutely essential for everybody to understand. Now, if you perform that nonsense of heavy duty or similar, going all out in every set, force reps, negatives, this, that, then you are going to exhaust your central nervous system, and you will accumulate that systemic fatigue immediately after a few sets like that, not to mention after the whole workout of heavy duty or whatever else. But you're not going to exhaust your muscle. And this is why that training cannot last long. It lasts short because your systemic recovery is not good. You are accumulating systemic exhaustion, meaning you are overriding your CNS. And this is critical. So remember this when you go to the gym next time. If you do recommended number of sets and reps as I advise, you will exhaust your targeted muscle, but not your CNS. And this is the difference between the local fatigue, which is muscular fatigue, and systemic fatigue, which is the fatigue of the whole system. Now you need to also remember that recovery is individual, and this is why you cannot copy anybody's workout. You should find exactly what works for you. And I said it so many times. For example, Frank Zane could recover from the training system number of sets that he has done, but he never trained like Serge Nubret. Serge Nubret did whatever he did, he recovered from it, no problem. Arnold had his own number of sets, own number of training sessions per week. He found out what works for him. And people who tried to copy him obviously failed because they couldn't. So remember that. You should not just copy somebody else. When I give training advice, number of sets and number of reps in my personalized training programs to my clients, I always say, use this as a guide, as a target, as a signpost, because what I'm recommending is where you should end up. Should you immediately start doing this? No. What you need to do, you need to increase the number of sets, number of reps, form. You need to improve your form, find the right weight, and then see how many sets you can do. So this is why we also always have consultations after they receive their personalized training or nutritional program. We have a consultation in which I explain more in detail what has been written in the personalized program. And you need to understand that I have done countless number of these programs, and they are never the same. They're always different because people are different. I get the full profile of every single client, person who orders them, and they send me their images. They send me the training systems, fitness level, years in training. And then I actually recommend particular training system, number of reps and number of sets. But it's never the same, meaning you should never copy somebody else simply because it will not work. So now we have learned about recovery and how important that is. But another question remains. What should you actually do with this information? When should you increase the volume? When should you reduce the volume? And can we learn something from most famous bodybuilders? And this is exactly what we are going to discuss in the final part. Now we have established something very important, and this is that there is no magical number of weekly sets that guarantees muscle growth for everyone. So recovery determines how much training your body can actually benefit from. And this is very important, so remember this. But now comes the practical question. How do you know when is the time to add more volume? And equally important, how do you know when you should reduce it? Let's begin with a situation that most bodybuilders actually hope for. Imagine you have been training consistently for several months. Your strength is improving, your form is improving, you are doing everything right, your technique is improving, you are completely recovering between your workouts, you are motivated, you're sleeping well, you're energetic, you're looking forward to your training sessions. The pump is excellent after every session, and yet your muscle growth started slowing down. So what should you do? In this situation, adding more sets may be exactly what your body needs. Why? Because your body has adapted to your current workload. And remember, the purpose of training is to provide a stimulus that forces body to adapt. If the stimulus becomes easy, adaptation slows. So increasing volume by just 2 or 3 or 4 productive sets per muscle group may be enough to restart your progress again. But notice what I said. Increase the number of sets for 2 or 3, max 4 per muscle group, not more. So if you were doing 10 sets, everything was fine, you were progressing, you feel great, motivated, pumped, sleeping well, but you started to slow down a little bit with your growth, then you should increase the number of sets for that particular muscle maybe to 13 or 14 max. Not 20, not 30, as I often advise. But I always say that this is a guide, this is a signpost, guidance. So don't just jump into the maximum number of sets that will be one day possible for you, but slowly increase for 2 to 4 sets per muscle group. So this is the way of increasing constructively the number of sets under these particular circumstances that I have just mentioned. Now let us look at the opposite situation. You have been training hard, you may have had even more sets, perhaps your intensity increased, but suddenly your strength begins falling, your motivation disappears, your muscles remain sore longer than usual, you don't get any pump, you don't sleep well, everything feels heavy. Should you continue to add volume? Absolutely not. So you have most likely been doing too many sets. Then you need to reduce the number of sets and find the right number of sets that will allow you to recover fully. Once you recover fully and start progressing again, once you enter those positive, happy waters, if you want, then you can start thinking about increasing the number of sets again. But if you are doing already too many sets, you should basically think about reducing the volume. Another mistake is assuming that you should be training like a professional bodybuilder or somebody who is very advanced. I train anywhere from 20 to 30 sets, and I advise people to train like that and give them that as guidance. This is where they should be ending up. When? In few months, in few years, regardless. Slowly. You need to develop, you need to mature for that. But I'm telling you what I do and what is the best possible range of sets for every muscle group. But that doesn't mean that you should be doing it immediately. So a lot of people are actually copying training programs of most advanced bodybuilders and clearly running into trouble. You need to understand that the body adapts. I mentioned it so many times in this video. That adaptation has been happening with somebody who is training 30 years, for example. So this individual, highly advanced bodybuilder, has already adapted. He has found the number of sets, the number of reps, the weights that he does exactly right, and he can recover from that. Also, they may be taking steroids. That helps recovery too. So what I do is one thing. Should you copy them? Absolutely not. And this is a big problem. Many people are actually copying the principles of advanced bodybuilders and simply ruining their perspectives. They don't grow, they can even get injured. So never copy a training system from somebody who is very advanced. After more than 40 years in bodybuilding, coaching thousands of clients and competing myself, I have become convinced of one thing, that recovery is the foundation of bodybuilding. It's not intensity, it's not frequency, not weekly number of sets, but recovery. Because training only creates the opportunity for growth. Recovery decides whether that opportunity becomes reality. If you don't recover, you will never grow. Some people have built amazing physiques doing 16 sets per muscle groups. For example, Haney. But some people like Arnold did 25 sets. Some people did 40 sets like Serge Nubret. So again, you see, they have done what they could have recovered from. Training systems, number of sets, reps, intensity. They found out what they can recover from that stimulus. And they were masters in that. So they communicated with their bodies. They interpreted the body's signals perfectly, and they knew when to go for another session, when to go for more sets, more reps, until they finally found the right number of sets, right number of reps, etc. So all this you should take as advice and start communicating with yourself, with your body, and start reading the signals that your body is constantly sending you back. One of the biggest mistakes modern bodybuilding has made is trying to simplify muscle growth into universal rules. 10 sets, 15 sets, 20 sets. But your muscles simply don't know what scientific average is. All they know is the stimulus they receive and whether they can recover from it. So you should stop asking what is the perfect number of sets. Instead, you should ask yourself, has my body recovered enough to benefit from more work? And this is very different. And this simple question will teach you more about building muscle than any spreadsheet ever could. Because at the end of the day, the best training program is not the one with most sets, but the one that provides enough stimulus while still allowing complete recovery. And this is exactly how the greatest physiques in bodybuilding history were built. So in order to help you discover the perfect training systems, the perfect number of sets, number of reps, I have published for you 13 ebooks which are fully loaded with detailed information about everything that you always wanted to know about bodybuilding. So if you want to expand your knowledge and widen your horizons, start growing finally, click on the link in the comments and you can download my ebooks. Also, for the ones who want to learn how to train in perfect form, I have published Bodybuilding Blueprint course, which is made of 8 videos in which I personally demonstrate and explain most effective exercises for all major muscle groups. So if you want to learn how to train in perfect form and stop wasting time in the gym, click on the link in the comment and you can access my Bodybuilding Blueprint course. So guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, and also send me your comments. And until the next video, I wish you all the best.